Welcome back everyone to another Psych Reacts video. Today we are going to be discussing John Wayne Gacy, who is an American serial killer and sex offender who murdered 33 young boys and men. We are looking at the video called John Wayne Gacy, A Real Life Nightmare from the channel of Real Crime. Go check them out. I'll leave a link in the description below to their channel. Go check them out, subscribe, follow them. They have great stories over there. But without further ado, let's jump into this.
Gacy had a difficult upbringing. His father was an alcoholic who was reportedly both mentally and physically abusive to his children and their mother.
His father spent apparently all of Gacy's childhood demeaning him and physically punishing him and telling him how stupid and worthless and effeminate he was.
So right off the rip here, we get a little bit of an insight into Gacy's childhood. And I will brief this by saying I am not a professional. I am a psychology major, and I am about to finish my graduate classes for my first master's degree in psychology. But going forward, the rest of this is just my opinion. So one thing that I will say is what I feel is common in serial killers is an abusive or traumatic childhood. Now, not all serial killers have a traumatic or abusive childhood. Some just end up growing up differently and may have the best childhood. It really just depends on how a child learns and grows from their environment. But an abusive father is actually a very key component to the traumatic childhood in John Wayne Gacy. Abusive parents can make him feel belittled, can make him feel like he's not worth anything, and he may grow up thinking that he will never be enough. In my opinion, for those who experience an abusive parent or parents, or have a traumatic childhood, I feel that children will sometimes either thrive or they will fall under the trauma. What I mean by that is that some kids will either take their trauma and flourish off of it, they will not let the trauma affect them, or they will take it and help others with the trauma that they dealt with. On the other hand, some children may feel that this is everything they have. This is their whole life, you know? And some may not even make it out of childhood, whereas others will either reflect that negativity, reflect that abuse onto other people and in their future relationships. So parents have a very key role on how their child grows up and who their child becomes in the future.
The father is a very significant figure in the genesis of Gacy's terrible deeds. For, to my mind, Gacy was always trying to satisfy his father, whom he never could. He was beaten repeatedly by his father, with belts, with brooms. At one stage he was knocked out by him.
These people grow up with such a malignant view of the world and of human relationships, and feeling that human relationships are not based on love and trust and respect, you know, that they're all based on exploitation and cruelty and inflicting pain.
A father's role in a child's life is extremely important. Most people will think the mother's role is the most important, to which extent it can be, but in my opinion, they both play equal roles. So if a father is abusive, is not in the picture, you know, this can mentally affect a child very heavily, as we have seen. It mentions that he would try to appease his father when in reality he really never could. This feeling of not being able to ever achieve something is going to create a sense of failure in his head, to where he believes that he is a failure and he will never be what his parents want him to be. And because of this abuse and because of this failure mindset, it can alter a child's perspective on relationships with people in the future. In the instance where love and nurture is supposed to be a thing for children, the abuse and the neglect and any negative factors that are traumatic can negatively impact the child's viewpoint on relationships, turning their relationship viewpoint into hatred and pain. Now, with Gacy here, we will dive further into what makes him a killer, but this is really important in the fact of that in his childhood, he was abused. Now, this is going to bring in some other emotions and some other key components for his case. But I want you to keep in mind of how the abuse could play in his upbringing.
Gacy was a sickly child. He suffered from a heart condition, limiting his involvement in sports activities and consequently alienating him from his peers.
So not only is he experiencing a traumatic childhood with his abusive father, but on top of that, he has a heart condition which makes him unable to compete among his peers. So from that, he's already alienated in his family, and then to add on top of that, he can't participate in sports because he has a heart condition. You know, he can't maybe relate to his friends because maybe his friends are in other extracurricular activities. Therefore, alienating him once again from his peers. So now he's alienated from his peers and he's alienated from his family. So where does this put a child? Well, seclusion from peers and family can cause somebody to lead a lonely life. You know, they can feel lonely. They could feel like there's nobody else around to help them. Now, it's possible, since his victims were young men and boys, it's possible that he could have targeted this age group because he resented them due to his father, or maybe he resented the fact that his peers neglected him, right? So, in reality, he had nobody to stand up for him. And that could create a lot of hatred for his peers because, you know, if you don't have family, you turn to peers. But if you don't have peers, who do you turn to? So, just a little something to keep an eye on within this video, because peer relationships and family relationships are very crucial in the early stages of a child's life.
Well, Gacy got married and life from the outside appeared to be relatively normal. He had quite a good job. His wife had 2 children. So they appeared to be the typical cereal box American nuclear family. And Gacy wasn't just a regular family man. He was also quite active in the local Chamber of Commerce, and he played quite an active role. And he was a real figure in the local community.
One thing that is personally an opinion, what I've just noticed, a personal observation, you could say, between serial killers is that they tend to lead a normal life and they have a sense of normalcy in their young adult lives. Now, it's not all, but it seems as though a common trope with serial killers is they will have a family, they will have children. Like Ted Bundy, he was married at one point. And it even goes to the extent of some serial killers possessing a good member status in their community and are well recognized. Just like H.H. Holmes. He was recognized in his community as this studious child. He was quiet and reserved, but he was studious. So I'm curious why that is. Like, is it because they want to blend in to appear normal? Do they want this normal life? You know, do they wish they were normal? Or is it a way to abuse power?
He developed an unhealthy sexual interest in young boys.
There was a son of a fellow JC member who he lured back to his home and he sexually assaulted. So he's abusing power. He's getting into these positions of trust and he's taking advantage, and that's a theme that's going to continue for him.
So did he obtain the Good Samaritan status just to abuse it? A common theme that you'll see within people of power, you know, politicians, Hollywood directors, you know, for instance, they will take power and then they will abuse it. An example was a Nickelodeon director of many kids' TV shows. He was being accused of sexual assault of these minors. So, do these people receive this position of power in order to abuse it and get away with what they feel like they can? So Gacy indulged in sexual acts with a young boy who testified against him in court. Gacy was then sentenced to 10 years in prison. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Whilst in jail, Gacy's wife divorced him. A further blow was dealt when his father died and he was denied permission to attend the funeral.
Given the perfect nature of Gacy's ability to groom whomever he came into contact with, within a matter of months, Gacy had become head cook at the prison, had convinced the staff that he was an absolutely ideal person. What's more, then convinced the parole board that he was no danger to anybody, and so served barely 18 months of the 10 years of his original sentence.
So losing his marriage with his wife while also experiencing the death of his parent, although abusive, and not being able to attend the funeral could have sparked these murderous acts. Now, on one hand, he could have not received closure on his father. It could have left him feeling empty and the need to fill that void. Or, on the other hand, could have left him angry due to the fact that he was denied the ability to actually go attend his father's funeral. Therefore, this could have led to the violent crimes. Now, is this what sparked these murderous acts? Death in the family, losing a marriage, that is all major life events, and that can alter people's brains. So for instance, experiencing this trauma in his childhood from his father, and then experiencing the death of his father thereafter and not being able to go get closure from that, I'm not saying this is what, this is the reason he's a killer, but it could potentially have led to the fact that, he committed 33 violent crimes. Another point that the narrator pointed out, was the fact that John Wayne Gacy was able to become head cook within a matter of months, and he was able to be let go after 18 months during a 10-year sentence. This, to me, is fascinating. So possessing the disgusting nature to groom children is one thing, right? Children are innocent, they are therefore unfortunately susceptible to manipulation. But one thing that strikes me as odd is he was able to convince the staff at the prison that he was suitable for a head cook position. On top of that, he was able to convince the parole board that he wasn't a danger at all, which is absolutely terrifying, right? So imagine the amount of manipulation skills that he would need in order to convince a probably trained parole board that are trained to look out after this stuff, right? Like, typically prison staff and parole boards are trained to be able to decipher the danger of a prisoner. So the fact that he convinced a parole board and prison staff to become head cook and the parole board to let him out after 18 months for a 10-year sentence, by the way, is absolutely mind-boggling. The amount of charm that he might have possessed, the amount of manipulative powers he could have possessed, it's interesting to see, and I would almost deem this psychopathic, because people who are, I wouldn't say gifted, because that's like a positive connotation when really it's not positive. People who have the ability to manipulate, deceive, lie, convince, they are very dangerous people. And sometimes they can be business people. Business people are really good sometimes at being able to convince you to, like, hey, like, you should buy this product, but other times, people who are good at convincing, good at manipulation, sometimes they will become serial killers. It's interesting to me to determine what actually causes that flip in personality, and maybe it's a nature versus nurture thing. Gacy obviously experienced a traumatic childhood. Maybe he possessed genes that were psychopathic. Maybe he possessed genes that gave him psychopathic characteristics. But in my opinion, it's very scary to see somebody who is able to convince a parole board to let them out. Now, yes, this was probably in like I think it was 1970s, 1980s. So hopefully we have a better system now, but it's still possible that things like this can happen. So that's why people who are very charming, people who are very skilled at saying the right things, can be very dangerous, which John Wayne Gacy was. But that's gonna do it for today's episode. If you did watch and enjoyed this episode of Psych Reacts, be sure to drop a like down below. If you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future Psych Reacts content. But that's gonna do it for this one, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!